Devlin Bishop here with you, and welcome to another edition of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. Thank you for tuning in, and I decided I was going to record another episode, so thank you for pressing play. I can't stress how much it means to me that you want to spend some time with me, and I just, time is just so hard to find nowadays. We just live in a time where there's just so much going on in the world that we're just always busy and everything. And, so many options out there. Like, do I binge watch? Do I go read a book? Do I go look around on the internet? Do I go have coffee with a friend? So the fact that you decided, hey, you know what, let's spend some time with Devlin and see what's on his mind tonight. Well, I have a couple things on my mind tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep. I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about, but I've just thought, I've been talking to some friends, and I know a lot of friends have been having some issues lately sleeping and stuff, so I decided I'd talk about my sleep habits and stuff, and maybe, something that you might be going through. Maybe you're having a hard time sleeping. I don't know. I always heard when you get older, sleeping is, a luxury. And knock on wood, here I am again. My little superstition. I've never really had the biggest problem sleeping. In fact, I'm a really sound sleeper, and I'm a really deep sleeper too. I snore. I used to never want to admit this, and here I am saying it on my thing, but I do snore. From what I hear, I snore a lot. Mike had to get used to that, but he says it's actually kind of calming now to know that, he hears me snore. And that makes me feel good. I don't know if he's just making me feel good or if it's really true, but anyhow, I know I'm a snorer. My brother's is this big snorer too, so it doesn't really surprise me that I am, but I don't like hearing that I snore. I don't know, maybe it's vanity or something. Nobody wants to hear, oh my God, it's like Fred Flintstone with the curtains flapping and the wind and stuff like that. But I've never had a problem sleeping. In fact, not everybody has the odd days here and there, but as I get older, I would say maybe once a week or twice a week, I actually have some trouble sleeping. And so that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this. I'm a very sound sleeper. In fact, I'll share a little story with you that's kind of was bizarre. Is when probably within the first couple of years of me moving in with Mike, we live in an apartment building, and right next to our apartment, there's a huge, huge tree. And it's on our side of the apartment, the whole works. And I had gone to bed, and I had probably only been asleep for about 20 minutes. And it must have been one of those exhausted days, because I was apparently out immediately. Mike says there's nights that, he tucks me into bed, and then basically he hears me snoring, like immediately. So anyhow, it was probably 20 minutes, and I was already out, and this big windstorm had blown this gigantic tree, and now he was like 2 rooms down from me in our computer room. Basically, you might have seen some of the pictures. We've done some studio shots. This is where I do most of the shows, and basically there was a huge crack, and the tree fell, and apparently it fell to the point where it practically shook the whole building. Like, it was just so loud and thing, and Mike couldn't believe it because it just sounded like, Armageddon, the whole thing. And he ran into the bedroom to see if I was okay, and I never heard a thing. I was down for the count. He didn't wake me up. He couldn't believe I didn't wake up, and I just kind of, the next morning he told me, the big tree, it's down. And I said, really? I can't believe I didn't find that. Like, I didn't hear that. But no, guess what? I did not hear that. Anyhow, so it's really kind of bizarre that it happened that way. But yeah, it kind of scared me too. I said, if I'm such a deep sleeper, they it kind of freaked me out because I thought to myself, well, if I sleep that deeply, you know, somebody could come into the house and I might not hear them. And, I wake up and like they've stolen everything and stuff. Though I seem to have this thing where, though you can't say that because, I sleep in the same room as Mike and stuff, and there's lots of times he comes into the room and I don't hear him. But there are times that I can almost sense something's in the room with me. And, but yeah, overall I'm a deep sleeper. But as I said, as I get older, things are changing with me. And I'm starting to find out that other people are saying that they're having trouble sleeping too. And not just people my age, people younger than me. And I remember my parents always, my mother was a night owl. She'd stay up late at night listening to her police radios. My mother was a big fan of the police radio, and sometimes she'd also watch like late night movies or the Christian Network or something, just things like that. And then she would, sleep in a little bit. And yeah, it would be kind of weird and everything that she was like a night owl too. Now, I used to be a night owl. When Mike and I first met, when we had separate places, I used to stay up all night. Like I could literally stay up till 1, 2 o'clock and be up for work at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And Mike was the one who'd go to bed early. He would call me at like 9:30 and say, well, I got to get my sleep. But oddly, when we moved in together, it literally instantly changed. Mike decided he stayed up late, so he would stay up till 12:30, 1 o'clock, and he had to be up by 5:30. And I would be the one who's like, okay, I'm going to bed. It's 10. I can't keep my eyes open. In fact, I know if I don't get to sleep by midnight, I'm going to be wrecked the next morning. And there's wrecked the next morning, and then there's wrecked the next morning. I haven't had a coffee in a long time. Like decades, I'm talking. So I'm not one of those people who didn't get a good night's sleep and I can have a coffee. Sometimes I'll have a tea, but tea doesn't have that same caffeinated thing that, I remember where I used to work at City Press, they had one of those old hockey, what's the place I'm looking for? Like the old hockey rinks, and they used to have one of those old coffee machines. And I remember sometimes if I didn't get enough sleep, I'd get a coffee and everybody knew, oh, he didn't get much sleep, because that's the only time you'll see me drinking coffee. But anyhow, probably in the last couple of years, I actually have nights where I can't sleep. And anybody who knows this, it's a horrible thing. And sometimes it's just a question of maybe being overly tired. I find sometimes if I talk too much, like if Mike and I are having a conversation beforehand too much, I'm exhausted, and when I put my head on the pillow, I just can't. My head's thinking about too many things. I'm an overthinker. I've talked about that in the past, so that sometimes happens. I also sometimes think that, there's times where I'm literally falling asleep in front of the TV, and as soon as I get to bed thinking, okay, let's take it here, and my eyes are wide open, I look like Marge Simpson when the lights are off and you can just see her eyeballs, because it's just like, well, I was falling asleep out there and now I'm in here, and I don't even have to be thinking about stuff. But also now I've had a couple of times where I've had anxiety attacks. Now, I don't get anxiety attack. I can't even say it. I don't get anxiety attacks a lot, but they have been picking up a little bit in the last couple of years, but they're not like really overwhelming. Sometimes they are, but mostly it's just a little thing that I can just kind of write off and that's it. But just recently, like last night, I had one that I don't even know where it came from. They can range from anything from like I'm just obsessing over a topic or something, I'm overthinking something, to I just feel that, it's too hot, or I feel like, oh my God, like I've got the blankets too tight around my neck, I can't breathe. Or just anything. And then thing. And then I just sit and toss and turn. And what makes this worse is that, like, especially if you, like, if it's on a day that you don't have your alarm set, it's okay because you can sleep in. But especially if you know, well, that alarm's going to ring at 5:30 and you're looking at it and like it's like, okay, it's 12:30. I got to get some sleep. And then you're just constantly looking at that clock and it's like, oh my God, it's 45 minutes has passed. And you're almost at that point where you're not sure if you fell asleep a little bit or if you didn't, but you feel like you haven't. Now I remember it was actually the Howard Stern show. He used to talk about his parents a lot, and I loved when he told stories about his parents because his parents were all these old Jewish people that always had the little things. And his mother used to always tell them that if you can't sleep, it's okay. Just lay there because you're still getting rest. Your body is still getting rest, even if your head isn't. And even though it's not the best, you are still getting rest. So just lay there. And sometimes I'll do that, and sometimes I do nod off, but other times I just can't do it. So lately I have actually just been getting up. And getting up doesn't always help, but sometimes it does. And I'll get up and either put the TV on and flick around until I get drowsy. Sometimes I'll put the computer on and look up stuff. And sometimes if I'm reading on Wikipedia or something, that'll make me drowsy. Or sometimes, I won't lie, we usually always have NyQuil on hand in case one of us has a cold or something. But I have been known to take a little sip of NyQuil. And if I've got 4 hours before the alarm goes off, I won't do a full, shot glass. I always think of Dennis Leary, who said, you gotta love NyQuil. It comes with its own shot glass. But I will take a little sip of it, and sometimes that'll help. Sometimes it doesn't, but I really don't like this because I always thought, since I was such a deep sleeper, I used to think, oh, maybe I'm going to buck the trend. Now, I remember my father, he wasn't a night owl. He could stay up and watch a late movie, but he wouldn't do it regularly. As I said, that was my mom's thing. But I remember my father would go to bed and he'd have terrible nightmares, and I didn't know that until my mother told me and said, "Yeah, your father has trouble sleeping. He gets nightmares and wakes me up a lot of the times." This is before they decided to sleep in separate rooms. But apparently my father had regular nightmares. And I almost wonder in some ways if they were anxiety attacks that he was having that was based on these nightmares. The reason I think that is because, when I was a kid, we didn't hear words like anxiety attacks too often or depression or any kind of things like that. But I found out later that my dad apparently had reoccurring dreams about being buried alive. When he got older, you start thinking about your mortality and the fact that one day you're not going to be here. And I get that. As I turned 50, I get that. It's kind of bittersweet. I think I'll talk about it one day, but I'm not going to go into it deep now. But you can't help but thinking as you get older and, closer to the end of your life. And by no means do I plan to check out anytime soon, but you start thinking about the fact that, and there's sometimes it's a bad thing. Like you think, oh my God, I may only have a couple decades left in my life. But then you also think that, well, maybe it's also, it's kind of a relief too, if that, makes any sense. Like, not relief, but I don't know. You sometimes hear old people when they're about to die that say, I'm trying to think of what's the word, but you kind of, hear them say, oh, I'm off to a better place. I've lived a good life and stuff. And I always used to hate that because when I was older, I'd always be like, I'm going to live forever kind of thing. I don't want to think of it. I used to go through really, really bad feelings about how I'm going to miss certain things in my life. And it would like make me really sad inside, and it sometimes would be things that kept me up at night. But I don't feel that way anymore. It is weird. I have almost a calming feeling. I don't want to die anytime soon, but at the same time, but as I said, I'll go deeper into that in what do you call it, in another time, because that's really deep and you got to be ready for that. We're talking about sleep. But as I said, I get into a lot of habits like that. And, I don't think there's a magic cure. Everybody has their things that, this is what I have to do to help me get sleep and stuff like that. And I totally get it. And I always feel bad when I hear, and I know some people that have really bad sleep. Um, a lot of it too, like when you work for several decades in your life, you get used to it. You got that alarm clock, and anybody who knows, who's had a regular job, knows that, if you work 5 days a week and you get up at a certain time, eventually your body starts telling you when to wake up. So, even if it's a Saturday or Sunday and you have a chance to sleep in, your body might tell you otherwise just because, you're still like, why am I up? I can sleep in, and you do. And I think sometimes you kind of, I'm no doctor here or scientist or anything, but I think sometimes you screw up because I know people who go to bed, kind of late and then get up early and then they try to force themselves to sleep in. And I think sometimes it works. But when you start forcing your body to be unnatural, I think it kind of screws up your sleep habits too. So, because your body starts knowing, okay, we get up at this time for 5 times a week. I still try to wake up early. As I said, since I got together with Michael, I've been an early riser. I actually like doing all my stuff, my emails. Sometimes I've done podcasts really early in the morning too. And I usually try to, I'll even set the alarm sometimes because I like that time in the morning. But I also, every once in a while my body tells me, no, sleep in, you need it. And I will, if I don't have to work until later on in the day. Being in retail, sometimes you don't always have to get in at the same time. My job is sometimes I work in the morning, sometimes I work in the afternoon, sometimes I work in the late morning. But sometimes so I think maybe that's what's causing me these anxiety attacks and these lack of sleeps. But I notice maybe about once or twice a week now, I actually can't sleep. And the one I had last night was kind of a bad one because it's like you have these anxiety attacks that you don't even understand them. And it's kind of like I feel very alone. Last night I didn't, but I've had times where I actually have, wanted to I've cried just because I'm freaking out so much. And usually I'm okay if I go grab a glass of water, kind of remind myself, no, you're not freaking out. This is real and stuff, and just calm down. And yeah, but other times it's really scary. But I try not to overdo it. Like I'll get up if I have to and just do stuff. Other times I will try to force myself to sleep, but again, that doesn't always work because you just wind up thinking, oh, did I sleep? And then you look and it's like 20 minutes since the last time you looked. I'm not really the warm milk kind of guy. In fact, I love milk, but the thought of warm milk disgusts me, like warming it up in a pan. I know that used to be an old thing that, people would do, but not for me. It just doesn't seem like it. As I said, I might take a nip of NyQuil, but that's about it. And I try not to rely on that because I don't want to rely on that. I don't want to take, pills unless a doctor told me, you should try taking sleeping pills, but I don't think it's that bad. But lately it's like last night, I think maybe I got about an hour and a half sleep, and I don't think it was even like a straight hour and a half. I think maybe altogether total I got an hour and a half, but I laid there just like Howard Stern's mother says, just lie there, and that's good enough for, so that's all I really have to say on sleep. I just wanted to let people know that you're not alone. As I said, I meet more and more people that tell me they don't get restful sleep, or you go and, you know, wake up at 1:30 in the morning and come on Facebook and you're like, nobody's there. And then once in a while you see somebody saying, yep, can't sleep on their status. And you're like, wow, there are other people up at this time of night or stuff. And so I just kind of wanted to hit on that. I'm not sure if it's old or, my age or what, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I'll end it with one more thing. Somebody once told me, it's like, why don't you sleep in on the weekends? Why do you you know, because I know some people that can go to bed late and then they sleep in till like noon, 1 o'clock. And I have done that too when I'm really exhausted, but I don't do it all the time because I don't want my body to get confused. I get up early all the other times and then suddenly I force my body to do that. I think that kind of screws around with your clock. But I always think it's funny when people tell you not to sleep in because, you need it. You need to. And I go, yeah, usually my body tells me when I need it. But the truth is sleeping in is the same if you go to bed early. Like if you go to bed early and get up early and you get a lot of hours in there, it's the same thing as staying up till 1 o'clock and then staying in bed for, So I always think it's funny when they tell me, well, I think you need to sleep in more. And it's like, well, going to bed early is still the same thing. You're just going to bed early. You're missing the night rather than, the morning. And I just prefer to have my mornings free. Anyhow, so if you have trouble sleeping, you are not alone. And that probably doesn't make for great podcasting. I kind of hope it puts you to sleep. Maybe it was such a boring topic that you can put this on and it'll help you fall asleep. That would be amazing. I don't think it'll work for me though, because I find my voice much too fascinating. Even though I've recorded these, I'd like to, if I listen to old episodes, I'm like, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? I'm not an ego person that much, but it's just the way it is. So I've got a couple topics to talk about. I'm going to talk about another topic, but I'm going to do that at the start of after the break. But I also have 2 movie reviews. I got to see 2 movies in the last few weeks, and I want to share them both. And I'm going to start right now with my review of Ready Player One that I just got to see. And I haven't been getting out to the movies that much. If you're a regular viewer here, I've been trying to do my reviews as I see them. But summer is coming up, and I tend to go to the big blockbusters because they're easily ready available for us. And I got to the opening weekend of Ready Player One. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is the new Steven Spielberg movie. It's based on a book. And I would like to say I know the book is written by Ernest Cline. I have the Wikipedia page up. I'm not that smart. I have not read the book, but Heather, the Corta, read the book, and she wanted to go see it. And I love Steven Spielberg. I like the lead actor in this, Ty Sheridan, and the lead actress, Olivia Cooke. And I also like Simon Pegg, who also is in this movie. It also features Ben Mendelsohn, Lena Waithe, and Mark Rylance. And this is a movie that I first saw the trailers. I wasn't sure if I was interested in it or not. But when I heard Corda wanted to see it and nobody else of my friends really wanted to see it, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go. As I said, I love Steven Spielberg and I like a couple of the lead actors in it. So why not? So we went, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. It's the story of, it's kind of a modern day Willy Wonka. Well, not too modern. It takes place, I believe, around 2045. So it's a couple of decades into the future. And they won me off immediately when they showed what the world was like. Now, they don't talk too much about what the world is currently like, but there is enough in there to get an idea. And I think they won me over because of the fact that I believe this could be how the future is. Basically, it's, it's not like a post-apocalyptic or anything, but the world isn't the greatest place. And basically everybody loses themselves in this place called the Oasis, which is a virtual reality world where you can be anything you want to be. You can be, famous, you can be rich, you can be a fighter, you can be a warrior, you can do whatever you want. You can just go to a disco, you can date. A lot of people's friends are people with their avatar. Nobody is really themselves in this thing because they just want to be themselves. So, and I like that they touch upon that at times. They actually mention, like, oh, I really like this girl in the Oasis. And, the guy's friend is like, well, keep in mind, that might not be a woman even. That could be a man. That could be an older person. That could be a younger person. And I like they touch on that. But basically, the world's gotten to a state that this is the number one thing people. And there's a great moment that is so Spielberg. First of all, I have to say, Ernest Cline, this book is like, it was a big hit. And he, apparently, from what I heard, the book is almost a love letter to Steven Spielberg, because a lot of references to his movies and stuff like that in it. And I just saw an interview with him where he couldn't believe that one of the people that they were interviewing to do the movie, to direct it, was Steven Spielberg. He said there's no way he's going to do it. And then when Steven Spielberg signed on, he was over the moon because basically this was a love letter to him. And I have to say, I'm glad Steven Spielberg did this movie because he's done a lot more adult stuff lately. He has tried, like the Big Friendly Giant, BFG. He has tried to do a couple of kids' films, but I don't think they have done quite as well as they expected. But Ready Player One gets him back to the days of, E.T., like more of a Raiders of the Lost Ark, like movies, like Hook, stuff like that from our childhood that we grew up on. In fact, the sheer nostalgia in this movie is overwhelming. I think the soundtrack is solely, 80s songs. And that was kind of jarring to see because this takes place in 2045. But I have my theories on why nostalgia does so well because... But anyhow, there's a wonderful shot at the beginning where Spielberg has the main character, Ty Sheridan, Wade Watts. Basically, I don't know if he's going to school or something, or he's just going to hang out in the Oasis, but you see him kind of like in a trailer park where these trailers are stacked. The place is called the Stacks, and he goes through he's going through his neighborhood. And in the windows, you actually see people of all ages, on this Oasis thing, which is basically like virtual reality. You put like a headset on. Some people go all out and have like full body suits and stuff. I guess the more you can collect and play. And everybody's lost in this because reality has become so boring. There's some great lines in this, like, we grew up in a world where this is the character of Wade saying that we grew up in a world where we didn't fix things anymore. We just tried to survive it. And we basically hide in this virtual reality. Now, I won't get into my political views or my views about virtual reality, but I actually believe this is the way things are going. I know every time I talk about this, young people just look at me like I'm crazy, but I see more and more. And I think it's because I lived in a world before computers and phones and stuff like that, that I'm starting to see a lot of people that are hiding in these video games or virtual reality, or they'll hide, like trolls will hide behind, their anonymousness, or, going into chat rooms or stuff, playing other people and stuff. It's just, I think we're getting to that point. So Wade, most of his friends are all people in the Oasis that he doesn't even live near. He's never met them, but he considers them his friends. And I have talked to a lot of young people who have had relationships online. And when I mention, that it might, it's kind of sad that, people don't go on dates and stuff anymore. They just look at me like I'm crazy. But I don't know, there's something to be said. And I think that's why people get lost in nostalgia and stuff. And I think Ready Player One is going to find a bit of an audience. It seems to be doing well on its opening weekend, and word of mouth is very positive. And, it's not too preachy on the fact that sometimes you have to, this isn't a spoiler by any means, but basically what happens is the the person behind this who made the Oasis died 5 years prior, and he left a couple of Easter eggs inside the game, and anybody who finds them wins control of the Oasis. And basically what happens is after 5 years, a lot of people have given up on it, except some corporation that desperately wants to own the Oasis. But nobody's had any luck. And then Wade stumbles upon an idea and decides to take it. And it takes him on this wonderful journey where he decides he's going to try to win the Oasis. As I said, there is a lot of stuff about how life is kind of sad in this world because the Oasis isn't real. And you can tell, like, when they go in this, you see their avatars. And I think they're almost played up as realistic, but a little bit cartoonish, just so you know the reality there. But they do, obviously, there is a little subplot about how the world was a better place at one time when people interacted with each other. But they never try to, like, if I made this movie, I'd be a horrible person to make it because I'd make it totally about how, yeah, virtual reality's fun, but people rely on it too much. People try to get lost in video games and chat rooms and other stuff. And I would be horrible because I would just be pounding it. But Steven Spielberg still embraces the technology and stuff, but still slips in some things saying that there was a time the world was a better place, and hopefully we can get back there, but we don't have to abandon our lives that we have created, but there's got to be a balance. And I like that he did that, because as I said, I wouldn't have been able to do that. The performances in here are all great. Ty Sheridan gives a wonderful performance as Wade, and Olivia Cooke is really wonderful in her role as well. And then there's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of pop culture references, which some people, I always hear people might not like that, but everything in this world seems to have pop culture references now. But, you're going to see things like, there's so much to look at in this movie. When you're in the Oasis, you can look and you'll see things in the background and go, did I just see RoboCop or Beetlejuice or something like that? And, they must have had to get a lot of licensing permits and stuff like that. And there's one movie, I won't give it away, but they go into literally one movie, and that sequence is just phenomenal because they get lost in the movie, and the revisiting of the locations in this movie are just so beautifully pinpointed. As I said, Steven Spielberg's done a lot of more grown-up stuff lately, and it's nice to see him doing a movie which he may have tackled in the 80s again. It really shows that Steven Spielberg not only knows how to direct these, movies about coming of age, but he can also direct these movies with action adventure. So many times I'll go into an action movie where, recently I saw Black Panther and I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I thought the action sequences were not the best filmed. This kind of movie reminds you just how good Steven Spielberg is getting lost in your world and your action sequences. He clearly maps out, this is the real world, this is not. He comes up with some great ideas. From what I got from Corda, who had read the book, she said that they changed enough of it. So there were plot points that were there, but they changed it enough to not sure exactly where it went. And she found that really great. And I like her feedback on that. I guess I could read the book, but I'm not a big reader. But I actually think Reader Player One is a really phenomenal film, and I hope it doesn't get lost in the shuffle with the big summer movies coming out a little bit earlier this year, with Infinity War, The Avengers coming out on April 27th. I hope this one sticks around for a bit, because I think this is a kind of movie that we need. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of fresh. As I said, there's a lot of realism in this. I think this is the direction the world's going. And when I say they paint the future as dark and dismal, it's not as dark and dismal as in other movies. But 2045, I can certainly see the world at the point that we are in this movie. So that's kind of gives it a scary thing. I'm kind of glad that they did that it's still for kids playing these video games and stuff, they could watch this movie thinking, hey, I'm going to be middle-aged at this time. It's still close enough to touch. But, I'm thinking God, I hope I'm still around in 2045 because I'm going to be a senior. So, but I think he does a great job. I think you should check it out if you get a chance. It's Ready Player One. And if you want to read the book beforehand, apparently the book is really amazing. I'm not even a big video game fan, but I found myself really enjoying the world and the characters. And it's kind of a Willy Wonka for a modern day because, it's like all these people desperately trying to find these Easter eggs in order to win control of the Oasis. And it's really well done. And I think it's just got that Spielberg magic. It's great to see him playing in this arena again. I kind of hope this movie inspires him to kind of go back and forth. I always liked when he did like a Schindler's List, and then he went and did a Jurassic Park. I love that he kind of went back and forth, but he hasn't really gone into this territory again. But it's so great to see him back in the director's chair for a movie style like this, and I hope you all get a chance to see it. And I think out of 5, I'd give this a 4 out of 5. I wanted to go a little higher, but I did have a couple of problems. Not a lot. It's just there is some moments that I think the movie gets a little clunky. And then there's some little moments that I kind of Hollywood me out of it a bit. I kind of wish they took a little more chances on things, like when you finally get to see the people that are in the Avatar, they make it big, like, oh my God, you must be shocked that this is the person that was playing that character all along. And I think they could have been even more, taken that to a bigger level. It still kind of played out like Hollywood made the decisions on those. And so I would have liked to see a little bit more daringness. But 4 out of 5, this is a solid movie. Already one of my favorites of the year so far. Anyhow, another movie that's still in theaters is called Love, Simon. I'm going to review that coming up in the next half, but first I'm going to talk about a topic that's been on my heart a lot, and you know me, something's on my heart, I got to talk about it. But we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we will talk about that when we're back.
Here's a food delicacy you'll surely enjoy. It's new, it's different. Hot Italian meatball sandwich, just like Mama made. You'll find them freshly made in a crisp Italian roll at our refreshment stand.
Welcome back, and I'm Devlin. This is the second half of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. Didn't realize how much I yacked in that first half, and I didn't think I'd have much to say on the topic of sleep, but apparently I did. But anyhow, thank you if you stick with us. I'm going to have the review for the movie Love, Simon, which hopefully is still playing in theaters when you listen to this. If not, it'll be out on DVD and Blu-ray and streaming sites soon. And I'll tell you what I thought of that movie coming up. But first, I'm going to hit another topic. I wanted to talk about this for a couple of weeks now, but I've had other things to talk about. Sometimes I get on my soapbox, and I'm going to admit I'm probably going to cross some lines here talking about this, because this is considered taboo subject. Like, how dare you have an opinion on this? But I'm going to, and if you don't like it, just skip ahead and find my Love, Simon review. I'm going to actually talk about people having kids. And as a person who's never had kids, I feel the need to say something on this, just because of the fact that, I see it from different points of view. I've seen it from, family members having kids, to friends having kids, to just people I know having kids. And I feel I have a right as a person to have an opinion still. And just a little background of myself. When I was younger, I wanted nothing more than to have kids. I really wanted to have kids. I wanted to have, a son or a daughter. Or my dream was always to have a boy, a girl, a boy. That was my dream. Just like an older son, a younger son, and then a sweet girl in the middle. And there was times that I could feel that yearning, and And I didn't wind up having kids, and I made that decision. There came a point where I had to decide if this was exactly what I needed to do or wasn't going to do. Because, sometimes you don't have the opportunity, and sometimes you do, but sometimes you have to make that decision. And so, yeah, in my 20s, and maybe even a little bit in my early 30s, I would just I'd go nuts when I'd see a kid. I'd be like, oh, it'd be awesome and stuff like that. When I met up with Mike, it was a big relationship, and we got talking to a lot of things, and yeah, we talked about kids too. And Mike and I both came to terms with the fact that our life really, we didn't want to have kids. And a lot of you might be surprised since I just told you how badly I wanted them. But there's a moment in time that, and in no way am I saying my decisions are the right ones. Please don't think that. But what I'm saying is that I kind of think that I took a responsible decision and decided that I wasn't, as much as I love the idea of having kids, and I think I would have been a major, I think I'd be an awesome parent. I'm friends with a lot of younger people, and sometimes they have moments where they say, I wish you were my parent. But the truth of the matter is I responsibly made the decision that said my lifestyle, and I'm not saying gay or anything, was not right to bring up kids. And I now start seeing people making decisions on having kids. And when I talk to them about their decisions on having kids, I'm shocked at how many seem to make it for all the wrong decisions. Now, when I'm in my 30s, you have to start thinking about it, especially if you're, for me, it's a gay male. If Mike and I decided we wanted to have kids, we'd have to decide if we were going to adopt, if we're going to, surrogate, anything like that. And realistically, I came to terms with the fact that, one, I don't live a lifestyle where financially I could afford a kid. Now, I know everybody's saying, but you're never ready for a kid. That's a horrible reason not to have a kid. But you know what? It's also a very realistic reason not to have a kid, because I feel that a lot of times people want to have kids, and a lot of times they choose the wrong reasons. But I'll get to my reasons first, and then I'll get to what I think people should think about when they have kids, but they don't. Then I thought, I'm pretty got some damage that I haven't really 100% dealt with. And I think it's baggage that might carry on to a new generation, or I just don't think I'm 100% equipped to have a kid. I've made that decision. And two, my lifestyle, as in I wasn't ready to make sacrifices, because I liked the life I led. I loved being able to just do things spur of the moment and not have to worry about, getting babysitters and stuff. So it was difficult, but I think in the long run, I may have moments where I think I wish I had a kid, but more times I actually think that I made better decisions not having a kid, because I realistically weighed the options of, am I having a kid for the right reasons? And I see people having kids. It's funny. I know so many people who are into the environment and stuff, but it's funny how overpopulation is not something people talk about. They will just keep having kids and kids and kids. I'm shocked when I see people who have 5 kids. That's something I thought happened in the past when we didn't have TV or anything. But there are still people that do it. But sadly, they sometimes do it for the wrong reasons. Now, I think there's a lot of people who have great jobs and are financially secure that say, okay, we got married, now it's time to consider kids. And a lot of them say, I think we have a wonderful thing to have kids. Now, I'm not saying you just financially need things. It helps. And I think if you're financially secure, it certainly does help, but you still have to be there for the kid. And if you're workaholics, you might not be. If you like traveling and stuff, that doesn't mean you can't have kids, but you got to realize that your life is going to change for at least 16, 18 years you're going to have to work around these kids. So you really have to decide. And I'm glad to hear, and I'm not trying to say I don't hate kids. As I said, I wanted one or two of my own at one time. But what I find is that a lot of people are deciding not to have kids because they like to travel. They like to go to fancy restaurants. They just like having their free time and stuff like that. I read an article recently about how some parents are actually coming out and saying something really taboo. A lot of people are saying, I shouldn't have had kids. And before, this is something you could think about, but you could never say. So I think this magazine who put this article about these parents that came out and said that if they really thought about it better, they wouldn't have had kids. They were kind of pressured into it thinking that that's what you do. And I think in a lot of cases it is. I also see a lot of couples that want to have kids for all the wrong reasons. I know people I've heard them say that they want to have it to keep their legacy alive. I'll be honest with you. There are many times that the kid does have a better, like you brought great kids in the world and you nurtured them to the point that they did become better. But more cases than not, I see that sometimes we bring kids in the world that don't offer much at all. And, I know you can defend the whole every life has something to offer, and I totally agree with that. But there is another side of it. But nobody ever talks about it. I've seen people that have had a lot of kids because they get, welfare credits from it. Like they get more money with the more kids they have. And, sometimes you see that the first couple of kids they have, they weren't doing the right things with them. And now here they are again making the same mistakes, but now they have more kids to deal with. I also see people who, think, well, we had crappy childhoods, so we would give lots of love to that kid and stuff. But you're also giving other things to that kid. If you're like clinically depressed or have anxieties and stuff, keep in mind there's lots of DNA. It's been scientifically proven that you're carrying that on to another child. Now, if you throw in a partner that also has those things, what do you think? There's a better chance that this kid could have multiple stuff. It doesn't matter how much love you give to that kid might not turn out that way. Now, in no way am I saying you should give up on kids or anything like that. But what I'm saying is I just want to see couples start thinking about the kid when they're going to have a kid and not thinking about themselves. Because as I came up to, I was always thinking about me. I want to have kids. I want to give a kid a wonderful life. And I would. If I had a kid, I'd sacrifice. I'd do everything. I do that for my friends already, so why wouldn't I do it for my own flesh and blood and child? But the truth of the matter is I thought about it. And when I thought about it from the kid's point of view, I thought that, yes, I would treat this kid wonderfully. I would raise this kid wonderfully. But there were more things saying that there's a chance that I wouldn't. And I responsibly decided to think ahead for the future kids in my life. And I think, sadly, people don't. They just assume we get married, then we have kids. Oh, then they said, but you're never ready to have kids. But you know what? You can think about the kids ahead of time and think, what kind of life are we offering them? I know people that have got some big issues in their life that they're not dealing with, and they're talking about having kids. And I'm like, you haven't even dealt with your own personal issues. How are you going to be able to use that to not bring that crap onto your kid? Like, I'm not trying to be negative here. I just want people to actually think about the child for a change, the unborn child. Because I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, when people think about having kids, they're only thinking about how it would make them feel. Yes, they think about we could offer a good life to these kids because we'd be good parents. But you're not thinking about it. Can financially you do it? Emotionally, can you do it? Physically, can you do it? People with medical problems, bad backs, stuff like that, I know people who can't clean a cat box out. or can't deal with, having mice or cockroaches. They freak out. Yet they want to be, parents. And it's like, do you realize some of the stuff? I've not been a kid, but I've been around enough kids to know some of the gory stuff you have to deal with, changing diapers or puke and stuff like that. And you can't change a kitty litter box? You think just magically you get your maternal needs? I'll tell you what, there is maternal and paternal needs. There is. And I've seen people change radically when it came, but it doesn't always come. I have seen mothers and fathers who have absolutely none of that. They just assume that magically it comes, and sometimes it does, but sometimes it does not. I never regret my decision not to have kids, even though I may have the odd moment where I kind of wish, hey, I wonder what a kid of mine would have looked like. But you know what? I have a lot of younger friends, and sometimes I do play the parent. Sometimes we're friends, but sometimes I do play the parent. So I get to see what I can give, but I also get to see the limitations that I may have had for a kid as well. A lot of people are jumping into having kids without thinking of the children that are going to be involved in this. Because I, to this day, will say that having kids is a huge responsibility. That's a no-brainer. But we don't handle the decision-making big. We just assume that if we have a child in the world, then all of a sudden, I love when situations where somebody comes in and says, oh, we're pregnant. And everybody knows it's a bad idea, but nobody will say it. But once the child's there, you can't say, oh my God, they shouldn't have done it. You still say it behind their backs and stuff like that. But I'm saying it because I'm not afraid to right now. And yes, some of you might be offended about it, but think about my words. I'm not saying you shouldn't have kids, but look at it from the kids that are unborn side of it too. Because there are so many, and don't get me wrong, there are so many bad parents that have created good kids, But there are a lot of times that I've also seen good parents that have created kids that are just fucked up, troubled, everything. And if we just took a little time to think about them a little bit before we made these big decisions, I think life would be a lot easier and better. Because life is getting harder and harder, and why be bringing in kids that aren't going to be given the arsenals to succeed? And I'm not saying that's money. I'm not saying that's love. It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of everything. I have seen wonderful kids develop through, people who had hard times and stuff. But it's not a given. I've seen a lot of kids who've come from nothing who just feel like nothing. They just don't know what their purpose in the world is. And, sometimes that's a miraculous thing. That's a whole different conversation. This is all I'm saying is when you sit down and say, I think we should talk about having kids. Let's talk about the actual kids. Let's see what we have to offer them. And think of what the kid's life will be like. Well, we both suffer from depression. We both suffer from anxiety. This is something we need to think about. Have we dealt with all our demons in our closet? No. But the kid will learn to live with it as we do. No, they're your demons. The only thing you're going to do is be pushing on your demons onto them because you don't know how to deal with your own. Now you have to deal with a kid's? Just sit down, talk about this, and think about the kids. Think about the kids. I'm getting off my soapbox now, and we're now turning to a movie that's kind of fits this because it's a movie called Love, Simon. This was also based on a book, and it is a movie about a average American teen who has one big secret. He's gay, and he's in the closet, and one day he sees that another teen in his city named Blue, or goes by the name Blue, is also gay, and he's not ready to come out. But Simon decides maybe he can deal with his own sexuality by trying to find Blue, who he has this relationship with online, but they're always afraid to take the next step. So Simon searches for Blue, and this is a wonderful movie. I wish I don't have what it's who wrote the book. The book is by Becky Albertini, Talley. I hope I got that wrong. This movie was directed by Greg Berlanti, and it stars Nick Robinson, Josh Duhamel, Jennifer Garner. And this is a wonderful, delightful film, and we need to see more films like this. Apparently, this is one of the first big major studio releases that deals with gay teenage romance. We saw a lot of indie films in the past deal with this subject, but it's nice to see movies like this. And as we see the world's changing, we need to see all kinds of voices, from gay kids, lesbian kids, trans kids, bisexual kids, just everything. We need to see these. This is a wonderful coming age film, and the nice twist about it is how Simon tries not only to keep his secret from his family and friends, but desperately searching for Blue. And how they do it is he starts figuring out things about Blue and starts searching for them. So there are moments where he's convinced he's found Blue, and then when he talks to Blue online, you basically see he visualized that person, and then it turns out not to be him, so he moves to the next person. It's really well done. The lead actor in this, Nick Robinson, has done a couple of movies. I've only seen him in Jurassic World, and he was pretty good in that, but this movie, he moves up to the next level because he has so many nuances with this character Simon. And what I love about it is he comes off as very real in so many ways. Like, he's just an average kid. As I said, I work with a lot of kids of this age, and he does that. It does get Hollywood at moments, and I'll get to that later. That's one of my big problems with this movie. It doesn't go too Hollywood, but there are moments. And so that's an issue. But Nick Robinson really does an amazing job doing the lead character, because he's on screen pretty much all the time, and it's really a wonderful performance. It's a very funny film. There's a lot of humor, and it's not humor at anybody's expense. It's just real life kind of humor. He has a great life. Josh Duhamel and Jennifer Garner play his parents, and he's got like just a stereotypical perfect life. Josh Duhamel plays the ex-jock who's like successful. Jennifer Garner plays a psychologist who's also very successful in her craft. So everything in Simon's life is great, except that he's got this huge secret, and you can tell through the movie he's desperate to tell people or want to deal with it, but he can't. And it's a wonderful film about coming out and dealing with all the stuff. And if you know somebody who's dealing with this but don't know really what they're going through, this is a great movie to feel what it's like to be different. Now, I also think the movie's a winner because it also is a great movie for straight people too, because straight people are going through a lot of stuff too. That they're dealing with, emotions for people, puberty, all that stuff, the future. So this is a movie about a gay kid, but it actually transcends all that, and it makes for a great movie. And as I said, the suspense of finding out who Blue is, you meet all these characters who it could be, and you start thinking, oh, I think that might be Blue, or that might be Blue, and you're wondering, am I ever going to find out who Blue is? It's a great movie, and it's just delightful. It's funny. It's real. There is a little bit of Hollywood in it, and that's kind of where I have a little bit of problems with it. But it's not to the point that it's distracting to the movie. Simon's life is so perfect that there's a moment in the film where he is like, I don't know who this Blue is, but I kind of feel him already. I've fallen in love with his words and his emotions. And he talks about how he really doesn't care about who Blue is because he's got feelings for him. And then he figures out something. I think it's like Game of Thrones. He's a fan of Game of Thrones. And so Simon starts searching for people who might be fans of Game of Thrones. And there's just a short little montage of these awkward-looking teens that are wearing Game of Thrones shirts, and some are overweight, some are a little, like, not perfectly Hollywood-looking. And there's a moment where almost Simon is like, I really hope that's not Blue. He doesn't say those words, but you can see in his face that he's almost relieved when it's not these people. And I thought a movie that celebrates differences and stuff, I found that to be just a little bit disheartening, due to the fact that, this movie is supposed to be celebrating differences, but it's still kind of putting down, people who may not be, like good looking or skinny and that. And but it's not enough to destroy the movie, but it's enough to take you out of the movie for a minute to remind you, like, for, a gay, fat, redheaded kid that, went to high school, it would be nice to see me put in one of these films as back then, because I think there's probably a lot of overweight kids that probably, and I know, like, when they talk about average looking people in a Hollywood movie, they're still good looking. You see them and you see they're good looking, or an overweight person in a movie is usually, like, still considered slim to most standards, but it's not enough to take you out of the movie. It's a great film. I'm saddened this movie will not be seen by a lot of people. It went mainstream and there was a lot of opportunities, and I think it did okay money, but I really hope you search this movie out, because this is a movie that has to be seen, and we need more of this kind of movie, because this speaks to a new generation. Now, again, little Hollywood things. I don't get to hang out with teens regularly because that would just be weird because of my age. But I do see them in retail and stuff. And the things I have seen with them, I never see these characters do. Like, they just seem to do very Hollywood type stuff. But I guess if they didn't, they probably wouldn't have made a movie for this. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is what they do. But every time I see these movies, I always think, this is an older person directing this movie. So they're going back to the days when, before the internet and stuff, and, listening to retro albums and stuff like that. And I'm not saying young people don't do that, but it's just, to me, it just seems like it's very Hollywood in that way, as in, I'll be honest, I see a lot of kids on their phones, and you don't see a lot of that. Like, they do texting in this movie a lot, but they do deal with it enough. But I don't know. From the amount I see of it, I think it's almost would be more. But anyhow, Love, Simon's a great film. I hope you search it out. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5 too. It's a wonderful film. Another one of my favorites of the year so far. We're finally getting into a groove. We're just getting to some really good movies. But search this one out, and if you get a chance to see it, check it out. And it's just a nice feel-good film. Lots of comedy and heartwarming as hell, which is always a great combination in my book. Anyhow, that's my podcast for today. Thank you for joining me. I know I kind of went all over the place with sleeps, movie reviews, think before you have kids. So all over the place, but I kind of like those ones too. I'm hoping to get a co-host. I haven't had a co-host in a while, but we're going to try to get one in for you soon, because I want one too, so I don't have to talk so much, because I feel very rough, and I'm going to go get a drink right now. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.